Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Crystal Coble, and I'm with the Family and Children's Resource Program at the UNC School of Social Work, and I will be your moderator today. We are here to talk about an introduction to the Permanency Planning Review, and I know that this is a lot of new information that everyone is eager to hear. So we are actually going to go ahead and get started. We will have others probably joining us since it's right at 10:30, but we're going to go ahead and get started so we can make sure we have an opportunity to share all of the wonderful information that we have prepared for you on this topic. So again, thank you for joining us. A little bit about this webinar. It was developed through funding from the North Carolina Division of Social Services by the Family and Children's Resource Program, which is part of the Jordan Institute for Families here at the UNC Chapel Hill School of Social Work. Just a little bit about the goals for this webinar. We are hoping that by the end of our time together today, that you will be able to describe changes to permanency planning requirements, explain the purpose and components of the Permanency Planning Review, or you may hear us refer to it as PPR throughout our time together. Also, apply family-centered practice to the PPR process and incorporate the family and youth into case planning. Many of you have already found the chat box and introduced yourselves and said good morning. You'll see that there are two options for sending messages with the chat box that's at the bottom of the screen. You can either send messages to everyone or you can also send messages to the hosts here at UNC. And this will be the primary way that you can communicate with us today. So you can use this box to send in questions or to share comments. We'll try our best to answer your questions during the event today, but I will say we have a lot of information for you. This box is going to move really fast because we have so many people online, but we do have someone that's tracking questions, so even if you can't see it currently in the chat box, we have captured your questions and we'll keep track of those. So a little bit more information about those questions that you may send in. Since this is just one 90-minute webinar and we have over 330 people registered, we know we will likely not be able to address every single question, but we'll do our best to get in as many as possible. We do have a lot of content to share today. There's a lot of new information, and we want to make sure we get all of that to you. So any questions that are not answered today, we will capture and create a follow-up document that will be sent out to all of the registered participants for this webinar, and it will also be posted with the webinar recording. And that recording will be both on ncswlearn.org as well as on the Family and Children's Resource Program. And again, along with that recording will be posted the questions that we'll capture. And even if we don't answer them today, we'll make sure we get answers on there and get them sent out to everyone so you can get the information that you need. So one of the other features that I want to point out are the icons to get our attention. You can get to those using the drop-down box at the top of the screen that has the little character that looks like the one on the slide. And you'll see the options for the ways that you can get our attention using those options on the slide. So what I do want to do before we have our speakers introduce themselves is I want to share a snapshot of who all we have registered to be here with us today. So as I mentioned, we do have over 330 people, and that includes both from the division as well as county agencies. We have 75 different counties here with us today, and that includes 170 direct contact, 82 supervisors, 34 program managers. We have 10 trainers, 4 directors, and then quite a few other positions not reflected in those categories that have all joined us here today. So again, thank you for taking your time to be here to hear this information. And I will now let our panelists introduce themselves, and I'll start with Erin.
Hello, everyone, and thank you again for joining us this morning. My name is Erin Baluyot. I'm currently serving as the Interim Adoption Services Program Manager with the Division of Social Services.
Hi, everyone. My name is Gina Brown. I am on the Child Welfare Family Advisory Council. My role on that council is as a kinship parent provider.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Teka Dempson. I'm also on the Child Welfare Family Advisory Council, and on that council, I serve as a bio parent.
All right, thank you to all of you for being here, and to our presenters for assisting with this learning opportunity for our child welfare system. We also have tech support here. We have Philip Armfield, who you may see typing to you in the chat box, as well as we have John McMahon, who is online and helping us with tracking questions. So either of those are going to help us with our webinar today. So, since you're so eager to get to the information, I will go ahead and turn it over to Erin to start with our permanency planning requirements.
Thank you, Crystal. I'm so very happy to be here today, and especially to have two of our family partners with me to assist in walking you all through the changes that have been made to the Permanency Planning Manual, which was formerly known as the Child Placement Services Manual. So permanency planning will be the term used going forward for child placement or foster care services in child welfare. On this slide, you will see highlighted changes to the permanency planning policy. First, clarity has been added regarding case staffing. So for permanency planning cases, staffing must occur at least once a month throughout the life of the case. Then timeframes for the Family Services Agreement and Transitional Living Plan for youth ages 14 and over include the development of the plan within 30 days, reviewed at 60 days of the child entering custody, and then reviewed and updated every 90 days thereafter throughout the life of the case. So the most significant change that you see here is instead of doing these updates every 6 months, we are now doing them every 90 days throughout the life of the case. Then we have permanency planning reviews, which we will talk about in more detail throughout the webinar, but these must occur within 60 days of the child entering custody, and then every 90 days thereafter throughout the life of the case. Initial contact with the child must be face-to-face contact within 7 days. This has not changed, but this is in addition to the contact that is made the day the child is placed out of the home. Best practice indicates that initial contact should be made within 3 days of the child entering custody to ensure safety and well-being of the child. Earlier contact also allows any fears the child may have to be addressed by the worker. And then ongoing contact with the child is monthly thereafter, again with 4 out of 6 of those being done in the home of the child. Initial contact with the parents must occur within 7 days as well. Again, this is not a change from current or our original policy. This contact is usually done at the first parent-child visitation, which also must occur within 7 days. And then we have monthly face-to-face contact with the parents when the primary plan is reunification. In addition, if the parent is residing in a home in which the child can be returned to, 3 out of 6 of those face-to-face contacts must take place in that home. If reunification is not the primary plan, monthly contact must continue until termination of parental rights. This does not have to be face-to-face contact and can be done by phone or email. Initial face-to-face contact with at least one placement provider must also occur within 7 days, and then monthly thereafter. If the placement provider is a 2-parent household, then both spouses and all adult caretakers that reside in the home must be seen at least quarterly. Next, we have shared parenting. A shared parenting meeting must be held within 14 days. This is actually clarification, as the old manual addresses shared parenting, but the requirement was really unclear. There is not an ongoing time frame requirement for shared parenting, but it must be an ongoing activity that is both monitored and documented in the case record. Shared parenting, when practiced, leads to permanency in a more timely manner, including cases that achieve reunification as well as other permanency outcomes. In addition to the shared parenting meeting, we have the family time and contact plan that must be completed within 14 days. This was formerly known as the visitation plan. This must be completed in partnership with the family within 14 days of the child entering custody. The Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA, protocol has been modified from within 3 school days to within 5 school days, which falls within 1 calendar week. And this is for the best interest determination meeting to be held. This allows for more time for us to address educational stability. There is no longer a requirement for 2 collateral contacts per month. Rather, collateral contacts must be made whenever indicated by the child and family's needs. When case planning is done right, collateral contacts are made naturally. Social workers are contacting the child's daycare provider, the therapist, the child's grandmother, or the child's guardian ad litem. In order to streamline child and family team meetings, family services agreements, and agency reviews, there is now a new requirement for permanency planning reviews, or PPRs. And so this is the process that combines the components of a PPAT, or agency review, a child and family team meeting, and a review of the family services agreement in order to eliminate the need for multiple meetings within the same time frame that really can create a hardship for families. Therefore, the new PPR process was created to promote more family engagement as well as timely permanency for children. The permanency planning review is really a team process that focuses on both the child and the family. And it also includes an agency review of the case to ensure efforts are being made to achieve permanence in a timely manner for every child in foster care. The PPR is not a new requirement or concept. Again, it includes the various components of the agency review, formerly known as the PPAT, and the child and family team meeting, and the family services agreement. So why have we made changes to this process? First, we want to streamline it to make it more effective and efficient for both families and child welfare staff. So one meeting that combines both a CFT and a PPAT. We also wanted to strengthen the purpose of an agency review and a CFT while promoting family engagement in both. We really want to focus on strengthening our partnership with families and empowering them to be a part of the case planning process. We also want to improve our outcomes. Ultimately, we want to achieve permanence more timely for every child in foster care. All the while, we want to keep family-centered values and principles that guide our work intact throughout the process. It's really important to build a strong team of professional and natural supports around the family and involve this team in all aspects of case planning. This is going to lead to more planful decision-making and less meetings just to check off a box. As a result of the Child and Family Services Review, we know that North Carolina did not perform well in regards to outcomes that really the CFT and PPAT meetings were designed to achieve. Formerly, the purpose of a CFT was to develop the Family Services Agreement. Then there was a requirement to hold periodic PPAT meetings, or agency review meetings, to review the progress of the case and decide upon court recommendations. Some counties have been conducting the 2 meetings simultaneously, but in the majority of cases, these meetings were being held separately, which then led to a fractured approach to engaging the family in all aspects of the case including the agency review that was done through the PPAT. In addition, in some cases, the Family Services Agreement was being developed by the worker and presented to the family at a home visit. This may have been called a CFT, although it really did not meet the true definition of a child and family team meeting. And then in some cases, we were seeing that PPATs or agency reviews of the case were not being held at all. The worker was using the CFT as an agency review when the agency review component was not really being addressed. All the while, we are seeing instability in placements, children lingering in care, needs not being met, and overall a lack of family engagement. So we have redesigned this process, combining all the components of a CFT, Family Services Agreement, and PPAT. The overall goal of the PPR process is to improve outcomes for children and families. These outcomes are evaluated in the Child and Family Services Review, or the CFSR, and we use the on-site review instrument, or the OSRI, to review safety, permanence, and well-being outcomes for children and families. By facilitating a more in-depth review of the child and placement provider, the family's progress or lack thereof on an outcome plan, and the agency's efforts to achieve permanency for the child, it can lead to stability in the child's placement, identifying the most appropriate permanent plan for the child, promoting more timely permanence, promoting family time and contact with the child's parents and siblings, preserving connections between the child and their family, their culture and community, and improve the child's relationship with their parents while they are in foster care. In addition, this process allows more focus on the needs and services of the child, parents, and placement providers. It promotes more family engagement and focuses specifically on the child's educational, physical, and mental health needs. So as you can see, this process touches on many of the items that are on the OSRI. It also focuses on family engagement and is a tool to achieve permanence more timely. There are many benefits to the permanency planning process as it is a family-centered approach to conducting required reviews of each case, ensuring that that case is moving forward towards permanency. It supports open and honest communication with all case participants so that everyone is on the same page, hears the same information, and can be a part of the discussions about the case. It also provides an opportunity to have a thorough review of the case that is both unbiased and objective in nature. So now I'm going to turn it over to Gina, who will talk with us about the benefits from a family's perspective.
Thanks, Erin. The Permanency Planning Review process promotes family engagement as it involves the family in every aspect of the case and involves them with their natural supports in the decision-making process. It also can promote partnership with all the participants involved in the case and supports connections with those who surround the family in building a support network for the family that can continue until after the case is closed. Most importantly, it promotes timely permanency for the child, which is the overall goal for every.
Thank you, Gina. So now I'm going to go over the components of the Permanency Planning Review. The first component is the family. So we are reviewing and updating the Family Services Agreement, addressing barriers that are in place to achieving permanence, service needs of the family, and then the progress of the parents, or maybe lack thereof, in improving the conditions that led to the child's removal. The next component is focusing on the child. So we are reviewing the well-being needs of the child as well as the child's placement provider, reviewing the child's current placement as well as the child's permanent plan to determine if they remain the most appropriate for the child. And we also want to ensure that concurrent planning is occurring at all times. And the third component is the agency review. So we're reviewing the efforts that have been made by the agency as well as other professionals. What services have been provided, referrals that have been made, what is the current status of those services, what services are still needed, and we also want to hold each participant accountable for making efforts to move the case forward. There is no right or wrong order to address all of these components, but it should be guided by the family's needs and wishes. In many cases, the first thing the family wants to discuss when they sit down for a meeting is their child, how the child is doing, how their doctor's appointment went, when their next school meeting is. So in this case, it is recommended that the child's well-being needs be addressed first. In other cases, the parents may be excited to share the progress they have made on their family services agreement. So in this case, it's recommended that the family services agreement progress be addressed first. During the entire process, we should be engaging the family and also ensuring efforts are made by every participant to achieve timely permanence. The agency review component of the PPR is required by federal law, which is in Section 475 of the Social Security Act. And the definition of this is a review that is open to the participation of the parents unless parental rights have been terminated, and the child, if the child is age and developmentally appropriate, that is conducted by a panel of appropriate persons, including at least one person that is not responsible for either the case management of or the delivery of services to the parent or the child. In addition, North Carolina Permanency Planning policy requires the child's placement provider or any other person who has been identified as a potential guardian or adoptive parent, any natural supports identified by the family, as well as the child's guardian ad litem and any other community resource person necessary to be invited to the review. The social worker and supervisor will also be present, and in some cases there may be a facilitator present. However, having a facilitator is not a requirement, and the meeting can be facilitated by the social worker or the supervisor. In any case, preparation of the family is key. They should know ahead of time who will or who potentially will be present at the review and the importance of the participation in the review. The role of the team is to review the safety and risk concerns as well as the well-being needs of both the child and the parents. The team also ensures that reasonable efforts are being made by everyone involved in order to achieve permanence for the child. The team also reviews the status of the family services agreement, which in turn helps the team make decisions on how to move towards permanency, and it also helps determine whether a plan change should be recommended at the next court hearing. The team also develops overall recommendations for the court based on their unbiased and objective review of the case. So I'm now going to hand it over to Teka, who will talk with you about the importance of preparing the family.
Thank you, Erin. As we know, it is important to inform families of any non-negotiables prior to the permanency planning review. That non-negotiable is really critical to your meeting. It can definitely help identify some personal natural supports for the family and how they can help the process of the permanency planning. It's also an area where families can begin, we can begin building this relationship with you to help support us through this process. One of the things as far as a non-negotiable, we should be aware as families who are required to be there. And it could be someone that we really don't want to be involved with. However, the courts has and made sure that that individual, the judge has made sure that that individual is at the table. This is also a time to talk with families who should be at the table, why, how they're going to help with the process. No one likes surprises. So the non-negotiables are really important to be clear. And moving forward with Erin.
Thank you, Teka. The required time frames for PPRs are now here on the screen. So again, the initial PPR is required to be held within 60 days of the child entering custody, and then every 90 days thereafter throughout the life of the case. PPRs are also held when there is a recommended change in the permanent plan outside of the regular review schedule. So the most significant change that you see here is, again, the cases are reviewed every 90 days versus every 6 months. There are many benefits to holding more frequent reviews. First, it's very hard to achieve permanence within 12 to 24 months, which we are required to do federally, when the case is only being reviewed every 6 months. It also increases the review of the child's permanent plan and could lead to more timely changes to the permanent plan whenever that's appropriate. More focus is placed on maintaining connections between the child or youth and their family and community, as well as the ongoing needs of the child or youth, the parents, and the placement providers. It promotes more family engagement, which can lead to increased family involvement in case planning. And it also provides regular reviews of the efforts being made by the agency to achieve permanence for the child. So I know I have thrown a lot of information at you, so I am going to pause here to take a few questions.
All right, Erin. So I have the first few questions that were asked. We can take a few of those. I will go ahead and let everyone know that we will have an opportunity towards the end for a few more questions. But we'll start with the first question we had here. If there is not a set requirement for the collateral contact, which was previously 2 a month, then how will this impact review or audit results if it is left to being, sorry, the screen is moving as I'm talking, based on the needs of each case? So how will it be determined that a worker performed well in this area?
I'm sorry, guys, I was on mute and didn't realize it. Okay, so thank you for that question. So when a case is reviewed, the reviewer will really be looking at the aspects of the case, including the permanent plan of the child, the needs of the child, the needs of the parents, to determine if collateral contacts were needed for that case. In a case with a plan of adoption where the child is in the adoptive home and we're really just waiting for the final adoption paperwork to be finalized, the last couple months of the case, it may not be necessary for collateral contacts to be made because we know that the outcome of this case is going to be adoption. We know that the current placement providers will become the adoptive parents, and so it may not be necessary to make those contacts. Sometimes we find that workers are stretching to find collateral contacts in some cases, so we remove that requirement and truly feel that if collaterals are needed, they're going to be made naturally throughout the case.
All right, thank you, Erin. We have a few other questions that are related to the policy manual. So one of the first ones being the December 2018 manual states that staffings must be done twice per month within the first year. Is that correct?
That's a great question, and thank you for bringing that up. So currently, the version of the Permanency Planning Manual that is posted online is not the most recent version. So the information that you are hearing today is the most current requirements for permanency planning. We are still working to finalize this information in that manual, and we hope that within the next week or so, the new version will be posted. But absolutely, shortly before implementation on May 15th, the new version of the Permanency Planning Manual will be posted and available to you. So in regards to the case staffing, the requirement is once per month, not twice per month as the current version of the policy states that is posted online.
Erin, thank you. And I think that will get at a few different questions that we had that really ask questions about the policy manual and the forms that are available, as well as when the new information will be available. So we will have those questions directly answered on the follow-up document, but I think that gives us a lot of guidance on quite a few of the initial questions that we were asked. So what we will do so that we can make sure that we get to the remaining content that we have available is we will still keep these questions and we may get to them at the end of our time together. We want to make sure that we get to our next section on effective case planning. So I'll turn it back over to Erin.
Thank you, Crystal. Now we're going to focus more on practice guidance and how to implement these changes effectively. So case planning begins with the Family Services Agreement, which is really the framework for our partnership with the family, their supports, and it also guides our ongoing work with the family throughout the case. Effective case planning is a necessity when providing child welfare services. So our interactions with children and families must be planned, they must be purposeful, and also directed toward the achievement of safety, permanence, and well-being. So an important factor in effective case planning is in order to have a planned and purposeful intervention, we must first have a complete understanding of the factors and conditions that contributed to the maltreatment, which ultimately ended in the child's removal from their home. Knowing and understanding this information leads to an effective case plan, which provides clarity through identifying the what, the why, the when, and by whom. So now Teka is going to speak with you about family services agreements from a family's perspective.
Thanks, Erin. Family service agreements are vital to working with us as families. They explain the reasons that led to agency involvement and removal of the child from the home in the first place. It outlines the needs and barriers that must be addressed in order for us to achieve the goal of permanency. And it also clearly defines what we as parents must do to alleviate safety. This is also the area where sometimes you as social workers find that you're going to have those hard conversations with families, what are expected, and we'll go into that a little bit more as we further in this webinar.
Thank you, Teka. So again, here you see on the screen the time frames for the Family Services Agreement for permanency planning cases. The initial agreement must be developed within 30 days of the child entering custody and then reviewed within 60 days and updated as needed, and then reviewed and updated every 90 days thereafter. So another change that you will see with the Family Services Agreement is that it does not have to be developed or updated during a child and family team meeting or a permanency planning review. It can, but depending on the needs of the family, it can also be done on an individual basis with the family during a home visit. Or if the family wishes, it can be done in partnership with their identified support system at a child and family team meeting. The family should always drive the way the Family Services Agreement is developed and updated. However, it will always be reviewed during the PPR in order to inform the team's recommendations to the court. As I mentioned, the Family Services Agreement is really our framework for our work with families as it guides the overall planning and service delivery with them. The Family Services Agreement is a living document that outlines the reasons for county child welfare agency involvement, and it also documents objectives that parents must achieve to address identified needs, as well as behaviorally specific activities that will be necessary to meet those objectives. The Family Services Agreement assigns responsibility for activities and it documents the level of progress or lack thereof that the family has made towards completing the activities, the objectives, and the behavioral changes that have been identified. It also documents the well-being needs of the child and the parents. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Gina, who will speak to the Family Services Agreement from a family perspective.
Thanks, Erin. The Family Services Agreement assures attention to critical needs of the family and provides structure for the involvement of all parents and relatives in the case planning. It also acknowledges the family's strength, their natural supports and resources, and their commitment to the child. It also allows the family to identify their own needs as they are the experts on their own family. The Family Services Agreement maintains the focus of the case on the safety and well-being needs of the child while promoting the ultimate goal of permanency.
And the Family Services Agreement also meets the requirements of federal and state laws, and it provides documentation that is necessary to draw down federal Title IV-E funding for agency staff. It can provide documentation for the court, and it also documents reasonable efforts that have been made by the agency in preparation for termination of parental rights if needed. On the screen is a graphic that explains the framework of case planning using the Family Services Agreement. So as you can see, the goal is at the top of the pyramid. The goal in permanency planning cases is always to achieve permanency, whether that is through reunification or guardianship or adoption. Our overall goal is to move the case towards permanence. And then below the goal, you see the need or barrier. So what is the need, or what barriers are in place that necessitated the removal of the child? Below the need, you see the objective. So in the family's words, what will this look like when that need or that barrier has been addressed? For example, if we have a case in which the parent has substance abuse issues, the objective may be that the parent refrains from using alcohol in the presence of the child. But again, this should always be written in the family's words. And then below the objective, we have activities. So these are the specific tasks or steps that need to be completed in order to achieve the objective. So in our example, one activity may be that the parent will secure appropriate child care before drinking alcohol, or it may be that the parent will complete substance abuse treatment. So as you can see, starting at the bottom, we begin with the activities or those specific steps to complete in order to then achieve the objective, which will then remove the need or barrier. And once all the needs or barriers are removed, then we can achieve our goal. And as you can see, the pyramid is somewhat split in two. And that is because the goal is always identified by the court. And then the needs come from the strengths and needs assessment. But the bottom of the pyramid, the objective and the activities, should always be completed in partnership with the family. So now I'm going to turn it over to Teka, who will talk a little bit more about the graphic.
I want to follow up with a little bit in reference to what Erin was speaking of with this graphic. This is one of the documents that I really think you as social workers can utilize, and trainers, to be able to show the visual with the families, to walk them through that process so they can understand what the expectations are of not only them, but you as well. So many families will not interpret it as this is something you're making them do. This is actually a document that they can see for themselves where they need to work, where guidance or support is needed. It's also very clear that you as social workers, when you have your child and family team meetings, along with this permanency plan review, it's clear that there are some non-negotiables that the courts are going to have at the table. And so this is a visual that you can share with families to support the family service agreement. It also enhances your conversation with families, how how you're communicating, which also interprets how they will begin to communicate with them. One thing that this document does do, it really helps remove the barriers of families being discouraged and any confusion, because it's clearly there. And they can also have some of their personal natural supports help them guide through the process. And and Erin will begin moving forward, so I'm turning it back.
Thank you for that, Teka. So most importantly, the development and review of the Family Services Agreement involves the family and their identified support system. During this time, the family has the opportunity to provide input, any concerns they may have, as well as comments on the creation of their objectives. Also, it provides the opportunity for the child welfare worker to clarify and discuss the expectations for behavioral change in the parent and to identify the activities to achieve the objectives. Again, the Family Services Agreement can be completed in a child and family team meeting or individually with the family, but it is always reviewed in the Permanency Planning Review and should always, no matter what, support family involvement. In addition, the County Child Welfare Agency should encourage the family to include community and informal resources and also involve providers such as mental health providers, school representatives, healthcare providers, and even other DSS providers such as a Work First worker or economic services worker. So on this next screen, you can see how the timeframes for the Family Services Agreement and the Permanency Planning Review align. So again, this is just a review. So within the first 30 days or within 30 days of the child entering custody, you will be developing the Family Services Agreement. And then within 60 days of the child entering custody, we have our first Permanency Planning Review, as well as a Family Services Agreement review and any updates to that agreement. And then moving forward, the Permanency Planning Review and Family Services Agreement update is made every 90 days. This includes the TLP, or the Transitional Living Plan, for youth ages 14 and older. And then we also have child and family team meetings that will be needed throughout the life of the case as well, and we'll talk a little bit more about when that will be a little later in the webinar. The documentation tools that will be used when preparing for and during the PPR include the Permanency Planning Review Form. This is the DSS 5241, and this is the tool that is used for the Permanency Planning Review process. Then we have the Family Services Agreement that is documented on the DSS 5240. These forms have been updated to align with this new process. They are not yet available online, but again, they will be before May 15th implementation. These forms have also been aligned with NC-FAST. So NC-FAST counties will be able to go through the same process within the system.
And Erin, I'm going to jump in for just a moment here. We had quite a few people asking about the slides. So we have added them into the file share pod that you will see on the left-hand side. So those slides can be downloaded there, and they also will be emailed to all registered participants and posted with the recording. But I just wanted to go ahead and put that out there for those of you that were asking about them.
Thank you, Crystal. So while the permanency planning review does incorporate the components of a child and family team meeting, there will also be times outside of the PPR schedule when it's necessary to bring together the child and family's core team in order to discuss the case and make decisions in order to best meet the needs of the child and family. So I'm now going to turn it over to Teka to walk you through the purpose of a child and family team meeting and when they are required.
You're absolutely right, Erin. There are times where the child and family team meeting will take place outside of the permanency planning review. There's a wonderful quote that I think you all can now see since you have the slides by the Annie E. Casey Foundation. A child and family team is a team of us, of family members, natural personal supports, and others who are really significant in our lives, along with you, our child welfare workers, to discuss our concerns, our changes, consider alternatives, and help us develop solutions. This approach can be, it can strengthen us as families, strengthen our relationship, and prevent unnecessary placement disruption. And child welfare workers identify and promote a system of supports for the family. Often, child welfare workers engage fathers and paternal members separately, but making them a part of the child and family team early on might be more effective in terms of expanding the number of engaged family members and improving outcomes. A lot of times people think that the paternal side, the fathers, are not interested, have no interest in attending. However, when asked, I think you'll be very surprised at some support that you can get there. A child and family team is also a way to engage and partner with the child and the family and all the people who surrounds us. It also promotes building a support network that will eventually sustain us as families after the case is closed. A child and family team meeting is a way for a county child welfare agency to share responsibility for protecting children and youth with the family and the community. This is an opportunity to hear and learn what's going on in the family's life, how we can move forward, and how this can be youth guided with the family. At all times, child and family teams should be family-led, youth-guided, and agency-supported process. The primary focus must always be the safety and well-being of the child and youth and families. And Erin will talk a little bit more about some additional requirements.
Thank you, Teka. So previously, the CFT timeframes were tied to the Family Services Agreement timeframes. In the Permanency Planning Manual, we have outlined changes and clarification to CFT meetings. We've received several questions and concerns regarding permanency planning reviews eliminating CFT meetings. That is certainly not the intent of these changes. We still have a very high belief in child and family team meetings and that they should be conducted with families that we work with. The values and principles of a CFT are built into the permanency planning review. In addition, we all know there are times outside of the formal process that you will need to bring together the child and family team members, including the parents and the child, if appropriate, to discuss the case. And the CFT is really the vehicle to do so. So a CFT is being held within the setting of the permanency planning review. And in addition to that, CFTs must occur whenever there is a potential change in placement or efforts need to be made to preserve the current placement, or when family circumstances have just changed and the team needs to convene in order to discuss those changes. A CFT meeting must also be held anytime the family, the child, or the placement provider requests to have one. If something significant comes up during the 90-day waiting period between permanency planning reviews and the team needs to be convened to discuss the circumstances and make decisions on how to proceed, then it's appropriate to schedule a CFT meeting in order to move the case forward. So now Gina will tell us why CFTs are important to families.
Thanks, Erin. Child family team meetings are an important tool for the family as they reflect the beliefs that the families can solve their own problems most of the time if they're provided with the opportunity and support. CFTs need to be family-centered, looking at the family as a whole, culturally sensitive, competent, relative, and supportive of the family's ideas, their needs, and efforts. They should be non-blaming, but empowering meetings that motivate the families to make positive changes. CFTs include family and their supports in planning and decision-making. They need to rely on the family's experience, viewing the family as unique. The meetings are inclusive of the family and their natural supports and their ideas. CFTs are strength-based, solution-focused. They build on the family's strength, history, problem-solving. The meetings focus on creating solutions and expectations rather than the issue itself. CFTs promote positive change that is needed in order to achieve the permanence. We need to always remember, child family team meetings allow families to be part of the solution and not just feel like they're seen as a problem. Now I'm going to turn it over to Teka to talk more about CFTs.
Thanks, Gina. Again, the values and principles of the Child and Family Team meeting remain the same and should be incorporated into the permanency planning review process as well. The team is made up of the family, their natural/personal supports, and professionals. Also keep in mind that if families do not have any personal or natural supports to accompany them with the meeting, and the parent and family is there, the meeting can continue. There should always be a clear purpose and goal of the meeting. That's really important to families to understand why they're there. Assumptions, that's just an uncomfortable feeling for us as families. No more meetings just to check off the box to say that we've had a permanency planning meeting, we've had a child and family team meeting. Now you have one. We have one meeting with families. The family should always be engaged. We should be viewed as a partner through this process and encouraged to share our input. We should be aware and really be informed and asked what supports should be allowed to have our say in this decision making and this planning process. It's important to engage our natural supports and partners with all the people who surround us as families in our lives to build a strong network that will remain in place after you leave our lives, after the case is closed. Each child and family team meeting may have different people in attendance, such as the next meeting. This opens the door and support you as part of our team for a greater opportunity to create greater outcomes for all parties involved.
Thank
And
you,
Erin
Tika.
yeah. Thank you, Erin.
Thanks, Tika. So we are going to pause now. Again, I see that several questions have come in, so we will take another minute to answer a few questions.
All right, Erin. So we just wanted to make sure that we take some of these that it looks like quite a few people have questions about, just so that we can clarify. So one is, are the PPRs and CFTs supposed to be combined or separate? There's some confusion around that.
Okay, so hopefully I can offer some clarity around that. So the definition of a permanency planning review is a CFT, a review of the Family Services Agreement, and an agency review. So yes, we are combining the CFT meetings and the PPR meetings, but we are only calling them permanency planning reviews. In addition to the required schedule, which is within 60 days and then every 90 days thereafter, there may be times that you need to convene a team to make decisions, to review changes in the case in order to move the case forward. And if something comes up outside of the formal PPR schedule, then it is appropriate to schedule a CFT meeting in order to go ahead and bring the team together to make decisions instead of waiting another 30 or 60 days until the next PPR. But again, the permanency planning review is a process that really combines the components of a CFT, reviewing the Family Services Agreement, and doing the federally required agency review.
All right, Erin, thank you for that clarification. We also did have a few questions come in that were around forms. So there are questions on knowing when those new forms will be available so that there can be time for training before the go live date. Do we have information on that?
Unfortunately, I cannot give an exact date of when those will be available. I know that they are, the revisions to the forms have been made. Again, the biggest reason for these last revisions was to align the forms in NC FAST. So there is no difference in the work that NC FAST counties are doing versus the work that non-NC FAST counties are doing on the paper forms. So just as soon as those have been revised and approved by our leadership, they will be made available to you. And I feel confident in saying that it will be prior to the May 15th implementation date so that they can be used as a training tool prior to implementation.
And a few other questions, if the forms will be fillable and savable forms. Do we know that information?
Yes, they will be both fillable as well as savable. Again, we want this to be a living document, so we want it to be something that is user-friendly and you are able to save and update as you go instead of having to start over and complete all the information every single time a review is required.
All right, thank you, Erin. I know we have lots more questions that we're also keeping track of them. Some of them will also be answered in the information that we have upcoming in the webinar. So I'll turn it over back to Erin and keep those questions coming. We'll have them tracked, and if we don't get to them today, we'll make sure they're answered on the follow-up document.
Thank you, Crystal. So next we're going to move into engaging the youth and family. This is really essential to achieving positive outcomes, and it should be done throughout the life of the case. So now we're going to take a look at what family and youth engagement looks like and review some strategies to promote engagement. Family and youth engagement is really a strengths-based approach to making decisions, as well as setting goals and achieving desired outcomes. Engaging the family and youth throughout the case encourages and empowers families to make positive changes. It supports true partnership between families and child welfare professionals who can then develop and implement solutions together. It leads to open and honest communication between all parties that are involved. It promotes timely permanence for children and families, and then it increases the level of participation in services by the family, which in turn can lead to successful completion of family services agreements. While family engagement is essential to case planning, it is important to remember that decisions are not made solely by the family, by the youth, or by their supports. Facilitating a permanency planning review with active family and youth engagement really means maintaining a delicate balance of listening to and being guided by the family and youth while also honoring the perspective of the other participants in the room and making decisions based on the best interest of the child or youth. So I'm now going to hand it over to Gina, who will discuss the benefits of family engagement.
Thank you, Erin, and I like that term, delicate balance. Engaging families means believing that families are the experts on their unique challenges and seeking to support them in developing their solutions. By empowering and encouraging the families to partner with the child welfare agency, the family is more likely to be actively involved with the services and the resources that are needed to ensure child safety, permanency, and well-being. As you see on this slide, there are many benefits to family engagement. For family preservation, involving family members and their supports early in the planning process may even prevent the child from being placed outside the extended family unit, and it could lead to more timely reunification. The enhanced partnership will help families feel that they are respected and heard. Also, their beliefs that their strengths, needs, concerns, any cultural differences are respected and accepted by the agency, and it can lead to a strong and effective relationship between the family and the agency, which in turn leads to an increased chance of the successful intervention. Increased family buy-in when families are involved in the decision-making process regarding a plan that affects them and their children. They are more likely to commit to making the behavioral changes and achieving the goals of their family service agreement. When you have expanding options, including the extended family members, any fictive kin early in the case, increases the amount of support the family has with things like child care, transportation, and expands placement options for the child or youth. Involved quality and focus on the caseworker visits. When you have an enhanced partnership that is developed between the family and the child welfare worker, can lead to more constructive visits, more constructive meetings, and again, promoting child timely permanence. Enhanced family decision-making skills. When the child welfare worker are modeling appropriate approaches to a strength-based decision-making process, the family is able to obtain new skills that they can utilize when communicating and proper problem solving on their own, and more targeted services. When the family are engaged in their case planning process, the team is better able to identify that family's unique needs and develop a service plan that is relative and appropriate to address any underlying needs of the family, to build on their strengths and draw from community supports. Building a rapport with the family and developing positive relationships is important, and that will lead to increased family engagement. Now, we're going to ask Teka to walk you through some of the strategies for building positive relationships with families.
Thank you, Gina. I know as we look at some of these key elements, they may seem very simplistic. However, in our lives as families, they are really important, and hopefully, as we talk a little bit about them, it will enhance the engagement and the relationship with the families you are partnering with. Respecting all family members and our ideas and our strengths and our needs. Viewing us as a true partner in the case planning process is vital and will more likely lead to a positive relationship between us and create great outcomes. Being consistent and reliable with us, and I can probably hear some of you on the phone probably turning that the other way. However, being consistent and reliable with us and responding timely to our questions and concerns, engaging in open and honest conversation with us, being transparent and informing us of the non-negotiables. And we kind of sort of mentioned that a little earlier, the non-negotiable. There will be times in our child and family team meetings where there must be someone there, whether I want them there, my son may not want them there. At the end of the day, that's the reality. They will have to be there. And by sharing that information with us early on will be huge. Eliminating any surprises, when we get ready to step into the room or into the court. It's nothing worse than for us to enter a meeting and, wow, a surprise is sitting right before us. In active listening to us as families, acknowledging again our strengths, needs, concerns, ideas, and the commitment to our children. Validating our role, the role that we play in the case planning and decision making. We as families are vital to our process and success and need to feel that we are part of positive change in our lives. Honoring and respecting our background, including our culture, our race, our ethnicity, our language, our religion or spiritual background, And respecting the differences in sexual orientation, being aware of your own biases and preconceived, prejudice about us as families. Being able to put them aside to partner with us as family benefits not only you and what you need to do, it also benefits my entire family, our family, and our children. Then we want to spend a few moments just talking about strategies of engaging families. Quality family engagement starts with the relationship between the child welfare system and us as families. Some of the strategies I would ask that you consider when engaging with families include developing and understanding our family past experiences, our current situation, the strengths and needs by gathering and assessing all of available information prior to meeting with us as a family. Together with us, identifying the behaviors that are concerned and why. Not only identifying our strengths and needs, but matching our strengths and needs with solution and services in order to build on our strengths. That part is really important. Just don't throw us a solution or a service, but ensure that they meet, they're matching our strengths. Meeting with us regularly during a home visit and permanency planning review, and our child and family team meetings, as well as courts, all of those things, and acknowledge our process. It's hard for us to move forward anyway because we're feeling judged and out of sorts. But when you notice, as you partner with us, that if I'm doing something well, just say, Teka, this was awesome that you were able to get, your son's school or make the visitation, the family time together. That's monumental in our life just to have that level of acknowledgement. Preparing us for successful transition, such as those trial home visits. What does that look like? How comfortable are we? In the reunification, there may be some changes in the permanency plan. And especially, what does that support look like once you leave our lives? Are we really ready? Providing that ongoing post-permanency support to us in order to prevent the reentry is critical. And that is really what we are looking for as families, just to make sure we have that cushion and that foundation to move. How do we move forward? Also, when a child enters foster care, it's important to establish communication and building a relationship with the family. It's a shared parenting meeting with the birth and foster families that ideally should take place within the first week of removal, but we know it's required within the 14 days. These meetings are valuable information sharing about our children's needs, their strengths, and preferences, helping to minimize the trauma that the child is already experiencing as a result of being out-of-home placement. It's also begins forming a positive relationship between you as social workers, child welfare workers, as well as the family and the foster family. As I hand this over back to Gina, she will begin talking about involving children of all ages into the case planning process.
Thank you very much, Teka. I wish to start this section about involving child and youth in the process. I'm going to borrow a quote from a youth I heard. The way that they feel about it is nothing about us without us. It is their life and they want to be involved. Active youth involvement in permanency planning and decision making is 100% absolutely essential. You should feel actively involved in the planning that directly affects them whenever appropriate. Planning must be generally and guided by each of the youth's wishes, hopes, and dreams, and must be respectfully to honor their feelings about the past and their current relationships. For that reason, it's critical to involve children and youth in the case planning, including our permanency planning reviews, recruiting an adoptive family when appropriate, and preparing for their permanency. It is also critical to identify key people who play a significant role in the child or youth's life and include them in the case planning as well. All children and youth should be involved in the planning as long as it's age and developmentally appropriate. Determining whether or not it's appropriate for the child to be involved in the permanency planning process should be done on a case-by-case basis, always considering what is in the best interest of the child. It's important to spend time preparing a child or youth prior to the meeting to ensure that their voices are heard and ensure that their views are listened to and considered in the decision-making process. It is also important to be honest with the child or youth and ensure that they feel that this team environment is safe. To encourage and promote the youth involvement, it's good to ensure that what they say matters and it has an impact on the discussion and the decisions. Include the youth's strengths, talents, their achievements as part of the meeting and as part of the plan. Please be transparent and ensure that the youth understands the decisions that were made and what the next steps are. Now, for the younger children, give them a self-report measure. For example, how is their current placement going? Let them have a say. Or you can have a child choose a food, design an invitation, or have a ritual for the starting of each of the meetings. You can allow the child to bring a friend for support. Develop a code with a younger child, so if they are uncomfortable, such as a hand signal. For the older youth, please meet with them outside of school, like at a restaurant or a park. Meeting at their school can be uncomfortable and can contribute to the youth feeling distrustful of their social worker. Personal experience, Barnes & Noble and Starbucks are great locations if you're lucky to be near those. They have enough going on and really do not need the embarrassment of their social worker showing up at school again. Talk to them about family and permanency and find out which adults are important in their lives. Promote positive connections with the youth, with their siblings, extended family, and their community. Provide them with opportunities for contact with other youth and young adults that have achieved permanence. Have them be actively involved in the LINKS program if they choose and other activities. Engage them in transitional planning to prepare for their future. It's critical that the youth have some say in the planning of their future. I encourage you to intentionally involve the youth in case planning. It is your role that helps the youth achieve permanency, but for the youth, it is the rest of their life. For the transitional living plans, all foster youth age 14 and up has a transitional living plan that is required. It must be developed within 30 days of the youth turning 14 or within 30 days of entering foster care if they're already 14 or older at that time. The transitional living plan is then reviewed within 60 days and updated every 90 days. These timeframes should eventually align with the PPR and the Family Services Agreement timeframes. There are 3 key elements to the transitional planning. First is preparation. Effective preparation. The youth will need your time, your effort, and your patience. Relationship building and awareness of the youth's unique developmental needs. Youth need to learn their own self-advocacy skills, including when and how to seek advice from professionals, other caring adults, in order for them to be confident in navigating their future. Authentic youth and adult participation and partnerships must be developed in order for the youth to recognize their strengths and their needs and to learn their own decision-making skills. The second element is support. Youth need access to services that are comprehensive, flexible, and capable of meeting their unique needs. One size does not fit all. Support systems should include formal resources, such as public and private providers, as well as informal supports, such as the youth's natural community relationships. Family is critically important in the lives of youth, and their Their definition of family and their natural support should be explored, respected, and included in their transitional planning. The last element is opportunity. Youth need to learn how to be financially capable and have opportunities to practice their financial skills as they manage their income and benefits. They should be encouraged to explore workforce opportunities. Youth need to be safe in the assessments of their safety and should be relevant in the age and abilities. They must be given opportunities to participate in age and development appropriate activities whenever possible. They should be provided with the same normal life opportunities afforded other youth that are not in foster care. And youth need to experience positive relationships with their family, peers, and community groups. Now I'm going to turn it over to Teka to talk about the importance of preparing the youth and family.
Thanks, Gina. As we know with any meeting, preparing for a meeting is really critical. The preparation and planning for our meeting with the family, it can go either way, successful or unsuccessful. However, we're striving for success. The family needs to be fully prepared for what to expect during the meeting. Issues that will be discussed. That's really important. Ensuring that we have an agenda, what we are aware, what are those discussion items on the agenda, the purpose of the meeting, who will attend, and the importance of the role of each participant. It is important to understand where the family is and any issues or concerns that need to be addressed before the meeting. This helps parents attend the meetings. Oftentimes you will, some people will say families aren't attending the meeting. How can I get them? When you invest that little time with families and going over some of those items, as well as some more that I'll discuss, your attendance with families will hopefully increase. Time and location of the meeting should be based on the family and their availability. The location should also be a comfortable setting for the family. We shouldn't feel like we're just tied up and we got to be there and get the head nod. Meet with the family, meet with the child or youth prior to the meeting. If appropriate, make sure to invite a support for the youth. That's very critical. A lot of times people think about inviting just an adult support for an adult. However, our children and youth really have people in their lives who can support them through being successful. Again, participants need to know the nature and the purpose of the meeting and each participant's role. What is the purpose of an individual I've never seen sitting across the table? What is his or her purpose in this meeting? Discuss the process and the goal of the meeting ahead of time with us as families. Help us understand what is expected and what will happen during this meeting. Work with us to identify supportive family members, friends, and people in our community to support, or someone from a faith representative who will also be attending the meeting. Discuss the family's tradition and discuss the culture before making the meeting and incorporate them into the process. Identify and address any special consideration that may keep the family from participating in the meeting. That's going back to those non-negotiables, those hard pieces, having those difficult discussions early on to see how to modify it. Sometimes some people may have to participate via phone than actually in person. However, in your child and family team meeting, that is still a level of participation, and we as families can feel comfortable having those hard discussions sometimes. Adequate preparation and planning allows us as families and youth to have a real opportunity to think about what and how we want to contribute to the meeting. And Erin is going to go over a little bit about a family-centered approach.
Thank you, Teka. As we have been discussing throughout the webinar, the permanency planning review process includes the components of the federally required agency review, child and family team meetings, as well as reviewing and updating the family services agreement. So as we move forward in implementing this new process, it's going to be vitally important to remember the values and principles of family-centered practice. Again, this practice guides our work in child welfare. So permanency planning reviews must always incorporate these values and principles. So as a reminder, I'm going to turn it back over to Teka, who will review the core values and how they impact our work with children and families.
Thank you, Erin. As we know, family-centered practice is one of the core elements and cornerstones of the child welfare work in North Carolina. Therefore, we do not want to lose our focus on being family-centered with the new permanency planning review process. All of the same values and principles should be incorporated into this process, including family-centered practice, system of care values, principles of partnership. In addition, pre-planning and participation is key to engaging families. Remember, the family should have no surprises. We should clearly understand the purpose and goal of the process and feel encouraged to attend and give an input in the case planning. While each permanency planning review should be tailored to the needs of the family, there are certain principles that guide the preparation and implementation of the permanency planning review. As a reminder, the principles of partnership include everyone desires respect, everyone needs to be heard, everyone has strengths, judgments can wait, partners share power, and partnership is a process. The permanency planning review process should promote partnership throughout empowering families by incorporating these 6 principles. In addition, system of care values include child and family team involvement, interagency collaboration, which is really critical, cultural competency, individualized strength. I like to go back and say cultural awareness. Individualized strength-based care, community-based services, and accountability. Again, these values should always guide the permanency planning review process, which in turn will promote positive outcomes for our children and our families. As I pass it on to Gina, she's going to share just a few reminders.
The values and principles that Teka just shared should always show in the new PPR process. Therefore, as you're planning for and implementing these reviews, it will be important to remember. So let's review. Families are truly the experts about themselves, their strengths and needs, their resources and solutions to overcome safety concerns and risk. Family members and their support should always be viewed as partners and should be part of the case planning and decision making. Honoring the family's tradition and culture is very important and should always be respected and incorporated into the meetings whenever possible. Incorporating family-centered practice into PPR process promotes positive outcomes and increases the likelihood of family involvement as it empowers the families to identify and resolve their own problems.
Thank you so much to Teka and Gina, who helped me walk through family engagement and the importance of partnering with families and youth in foster care. We really want to re-emphasize the importance of family-centered values and the importance of incorporating those into all of the work that we do, but especially the permanency planning process. So in closing, this new process supports open communication with all case participants. It promotes family engagement. It supports partnership with all of those who surround the family in building their support network so that that may continue once we are removed from their lives. It provides an unbiased, objective, and thorough review of the case, and it also promotes timely permanence for the child. This process is really one big child and family team meeting that truly promotes and supports partnership among all the parties involved, and it moves the case forward to achieve the ultimate goal of permanency. So that is the conclusion of our slides. So I think, do we have a few minutes to take some questions?
Yes, we are going to take a few more questions. What I will say is we know that this is new information, so there are a lot more questions than normal, and we'll get those answers to you. One thing that was asked is if we could give access to the version of the slides with the speaker's notes, and we have received information that we can do that so that you will have the information that wasn't necessarily on the slides, but that it was spoken to. And so that will be emailed out to everyone that was registered for this webinar. So I just wanted to make that announcement, and we will take a few more questions. So we'll start with, are either the PPRs or CFTs considered to have been held if the parents were invited but didn't participate?
So this is really a two-part question. So the permanency planning review process, which includes several components of case planning, which one is the agency review that is federally required. And the requirement here is to invite all of the required participants. Now, social workers or child welfare agencies do not have control over whether those participants show up for the meeting or not. So we still have to move forward with conducting an agency review of the case in order to develop recommendations for the court. In regards to a child and family team meeting, as we know, there are times outside of the PPR process when they will be required, such as a potential placement change. Obviously, we want the family members or potential guardians or adoptive families to be present and participate in the decision-making process through a CFT. But the true definition of a child and family team meeting is in the name of the meeting. And although we know we have to move forward if the parents or family members do not show up, we have to move forward with making decisions, but technically it's not considered a child and family team meeting when the child nor the family is present. But again, we do have to move forward with decision making and moving the case forward, so that will still take place, but it just is not a child and family team meeting. And of course, if the family is not present at either the PPR or a CFT, it is vitally important to meet with the family as soon as possible to go over what was discussed during the PPR or what decisions were made based on a placement change or a change in circumstances with the family, to update the family services agreement, and again, be transparent and honest with them about the status of the case, decisions that were made, and how the case is moving forward.
All right, we had a few other questions that I think will be shorter ones to answer. We had several people wanting clarifying information on if a facilitator is required during a PPR.
So actually, it has never been federal or state policy that a facilitator be present to facilitate a CFT or a permanency planning review. It may be county policy for a facilitator to be present. However, not all counties are afforded the luxury of having staff that are CFT facilitators. So there is no, again, no state or federal requirement, although, you know, if you have a facilitator and that is your county policy, that is great. But if you do not, then it is certainly fine for either the social worker or the supervisor to facilitate the meeting. And I also want to speak to the fact that there is no specific requirement for both the supervisor and the social worker to be present during the PPR. However, what federal law requires is that a panel be developed of persons that are able to make decisions about the case. Of course, we want to include the family, their supports, any professionals involved in the case, But in regards to your particular county, your agency, what is the requirement in regards to who must be present in order to make decisions? In most counties, that's going to mean a supervisor or even a program manager. So therefore, it would be required at the county level for the supervisor, the social worker, and in some cases, even the program manager to be present in order to make decisions.
Okay, Erin, and one last question. Will we continue to use the form on the modified policy website, or will new forms be added to the old state forms website?
So all of the new revised forms in child welfare will be added to the state forms website. So all the forms will be able to be viewed and accessed through that website. And in addition, the modified manual is currently located on the state manual website. I know especially the pilot counties are probably used to accessing the modified manual in forms through the T8 gateway. However, the most recent version that's currently available, which is the December version, that doesn't necessarily reflect some changes you've heard today, is available on the state Child Welfare Manual website. You would click on the Modified Child Welfare Manual link and then go to Permanency Planning from there. So that will remain available there, as well as the revised forms will be available on the state website.
Okay, thank you, Erin, for answering those questions. I just want to go through a little bit more of information that is in the slides that have been sent to you. You'll see the next slide does have some resources that you can get to through those links that are on there. I also do want to point out that the contact information, I have actually switched the pictures for Gina and Teka, and she just pointed that out to me. So we will correct that information when we send it out to you with the version with the speaker notes so that you can put the faces with the names. So I'll completely own that. That was all on me.